Today we're putting this house to the test and seeing how our air sealing effort panned out. Hey, this is Dayton with Hedgewood. I'm here with my buddy Mito from Nashville Blower Door and DIY Assist, and he's going to help us figure out where we're at on our air sealing. So explain what this contraption does back here and what you do just in general.
Sure, I'm Mito with the DIY Assist, and my objective is to help anybody become self-sufficient in anything they want to do. You called me out to one house, the first house that you did, and that was a really interesting time for us because we were learning about air sealing and seeing what the weak points are. And I think one of the shocking things to you is that you found out that interior walls kind of let air get sucked through all the little cavities where the sockets are and the light switches are, and they go to the top plates and they get sucked out the attic. And that's kind of a weird place that no one thinks of, but with equipment like this is called a blower door. It basically blows the house up like a balloon or deflates it like an anti-balloon. And you can find leaks and you can find penetrations where conditioned air gets thrown to the outside just by differential in air pressure. And so what we found out then, I think you passed your first house, right? And that was no problem, but it was around 7, and that's where a lot of municipalities in this area have their cutoff is. We want this magic number 7, which we can explain that number here in a second, but then even Energy Star rated sort of houses are looking for a 5. But in this case here, we have a 2 in this house, which the square footage was
roughly 2,800.
Roughly 2,800, which is a big house, and to get a number down that low, it's pretty remarkable. And you were able to knock that number down so low, which keeps your conditioned air inside, keeps the drafts down, keeps the durability of the house up, which is really huge, and it keeps the efficiency of everything, of your bills that you have to pay, the energy that you have to use, your footprint's lower. So there's a lot of great things that come of that. And so one of the things that you did was encapsulate your house with spray foam. You have the shingles, you have the roof deck, and then right below that with the rafters, there's spray foam all along that roof deck. And then all of a sudden you negate the need for an attic, which attics I think are an enemy to any house. And I dislike them and distrust them. I wouldn't invite them over for a party. But
especially when you've got all your ductwork in that space.
Absolutely.
You know, it's basically impossible to have ductwork that doesn't leak, right?
Yeah.
So you're creating, and you've got all that equipment operating in extremes, 180 degrees, 170 degrees in the summertime, 30 or lower in the wintertime, trying to condition a house. It's got to get all that air, it's got to go through that first before it gets into your house. So nothing lasts as well. It's got to work harder, and all the ductwork breaks down more quickly. It's amazing how, I'm really pleased with how this one turned out. And I think the combination of the spray foaming the deck, encapsulating the roof deck, the zip system panels that we've got here, and then doing a really good job of air sealing all of our plates where the walls meet the foundation. I think we did a pretty good job of sealing those. I'm curious to see if we upgraded our windows significantly, where that number would come in at that point. I feel like that's probably where one of the biggest weak points are on this at this point now that we're.
Windows are definitely an interesting sort of phenomenon. They're on my list. They're very low in trying to take care of and spending money on to try to get your efficiency better. At that point, you are spending more than you're probably saving, but at the same time, it also depends on what quality of life you want and what kind of area do you live in. Are you in a busy area and you want to go ahead and double up, be efficient, and also not hear the neighbors fight or shoot guns or whatever it is, whatever your neighborhood situation is, or the construction that's going on in your developing area? What's the actual need? It might be a great selling point, but then also it might be a terrible price point, to achieve those objectives.
It's a massive difference in cost. I feel like we've got pretty good windows in this house, but we've got it as tight as at getting that roughly a 2 exchange. I have a feeling that's probably the weakest point at this point is our windows, which
Which
It's
is a
not
great
a bad
place to be.
in.
No.
Yeah, yeah,
That's really great. And so that number, let's just go back to that number real quick.
yeah.
When we're going to run the test here, that's what happens is you're shoving air outside of the house and you're trying to depressurize to a certain pressure, and there's a certain amount of air that's leaving the house. We calculate how many times in 1 hour of keeping the fan on, if we kept that fan on for 1 hour, how many times the whole volume of the house will be pushed out? So they say 7 is the number that is the maximum number of times that the whole house can be exchanged of air.
Okay.
5 for maybe Energy Star rated houses, whole house can be exchanged of air.
Okay.
5 for maybe Energy Star rated houses. Hello. And then we also have the number that we achieved here, which is 2. So 2 is the number in which you're saying the whole house will exchange air pressure with that 50 Pascal, will exchange the whole volume of the house twice.
Okay.
And which is substantially lower than all the other numbers that we've seen, and
Yeah.
which is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, and the biggest thing there is that why you want the house to have as minimal amount of air changes as possible is, so again, like you said, to keep that cool or warm air from being wasted, from just moving through the house. And if you've got a wall that is leaky, you're now bringing in, you do want fresh air in your house, but you don't want that fresh air to come through your walls, because this wall, as clean as we try to keep them before they're sheetrock, is still dirty, and it's going to collect more dirt over the years, and mildew and things potentially, especially if there's a lot of air and moisture being pulled through them. Yeah. And then you don't want that air to be the fresh air into your house. You want to control where that good air comes from. And when you've got walls that are well sealed, you get to pick where that air comes from. You're not relying on that dirty, musty basement or attic or walls for that fresh air. And the other thing I hear a lot is you need a house to breathe. But it's not exactly right. What they really mean by that is to say that you want a house to dry. You need a house to be able to dry. So you don't want it to breathe. You don't need air again from the outside, but you do want that outside wall to be able to dry. So it's very important to design the wall system and the sheathing system so that it can dry. It's not ever going to retain moisture, but you don't want that moisture coming inside.
Absolutely not. Something that I drive around and see all the time that just baffles me is that idea of wanting a house to breathe. They're building houses with these crawl spaces and vents on them, and we live in the South, and the humidity here on a regular is 70 plus, or just around there, but that's where mold grows really well, is around that 70% relative humidity mark. And they're inviting that air in with all those vents because they want the house to breathe, and they're throwing in substandard vapor barriers which aren't attached to the wall. Their seams aren't.
Putting insulation in there, bad insulation that is going to catch all that moisture and all that dirt, and just be a festering ground from mold and pests and everything else. So yeah, when you take hot air and pull it into a crawl space that's always going to be of a lower temperature, just because it operates somewhat like a basement or a hole in the ground, a cave. It can hold less moisture, so it's going to drop that moisture in your crawl space. Yeah. So that's just a nasty. I've been in too many of those. It's nasty.
Yeah, me too. I've worked under those rafters, and they don't smell great. But here you've also negated the need for that because you're on a slab. I don't necessarily know what the characteristics of all the other houses are, but in Nashville normally there is a crawl space, and so those along with attics are kind of, to me, a big quandary as to why they exist. And I'm glad that I'm standing on a firm ground here and not needing to worry about what I'm breathing in and what's coming through my floorboards. So this is great.
Awesome. So let's show me how this thing works, and just give me a rundown of the process that you go through and how you got to the number that you did for us.
Sure, let's do it.
All right, cool.
So here on the blower door test, what we're looking at is a piece of equipment that looks at pressure readings, difference between the inside and the outside, and also a different guy for a pressure reading at the fan to give you a flow rate. So we're looking at how much air we can shove through the house to, in this case, depressurize the house to a certain standard pressure, which is 50 Pascal. So when you turn it on, you're going to have the fan turn. This guy, the sheeting on the door here blows in a little bit because we're depressurizing the house. And then you run the pressure up to 50 Pascal, and then over here you get an actual flow rate. And so if you actually want to run the test and get it going, we can do that. And then as we're hitting around 50, you're noticing our number on the right is in CFM, cubic feet per minute, and we're hitting around 1,500. It's going to bounce around here and there, but all in all, the numbers here on this house were about 1,500. And for the size of the house, again, the number was 2 for air changes per hour, which basically means if I left this equipment running in an hour, it would have to run an hour to change the volume of the house completely in air. It would only do it twice. A lot of houses, if you kept it running, maybe it would change it out 7 times, but this house is tight enough to where there's only enough air coming in to change out the air twice.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's go around a few places you were showing me that we could eat where we could potentially even lower that number more, or places to look at. I'm just curious. I enjoyed you digging through and kind of showing me some of the weak spots.
There's a lot of places where the house is tied to the outside, where there's basically these weird joints that you're looking for. In a house this tight, they're really hard to find, but if you look hard enough, I guess you could always find one. You mentioned behind your wall plates, you spray foamed behind all your switches and all your plugs and all the places where there's a box. A lot of times when insulation gets installed there, that gets missed, and so that's spray foamed, and that's someplace I look. There's also seals around the doors. There's every time a door or window is installed, it has a gap between the actual frame of the house and the frame of the door or window. And so those gaps need to be sealed. Here we have spray foam, and so those are done really well. And then also the seal of the door, how well the door is actually installed matters, because if it's not square, if it's not plumb, then it's gonna have issues and problems, either working issues or sealing issues. So we can go upstairs and look at a couple of other things. All right, so up here, upstairs, normally in a house, you kind of look towards the can lighting as potential areas or problems. But again, if we look inside here, we've noticed that there's spray foam that's going to go along the roof deck all the way up to the top. So those interior areas that were previously problematic have no issues now. One thing that I did notice as I came in here earlier was back here, you got some transition areas where there's been some batt insulation, not necessarily the greatest of sealing agent. We were talking about that earlier, but when your spray foam installers come in, then they already see insulation here. They're probably not going to take it out and install spray foam. So there's kind of up here in these gaps, you could actually feel air coming in using the blower door. It's forcing air out, and then as it forces air out, air needs to come in from somewhere, so it finds those weak points, and we can find them in some of these gaps and cavities up here. As we look around, there's other areas. I think the garage, we can step back out. The garage finds itself in this whole side of the house. So really cool concept for a garage too. Dayton did it again with like great concepts of having basically a drive-through garage on the whole house, and it's really cool. The ceiling of the garage is insulated with batt, so a place that I would look for areas and issues would be down here. Now, is there spray foam on this wall too?
No.
So I would probably look for this area here to either be spray foamed or feel for air and caulked to find out if that batt is somehow allowing air to come through, because this area could be a potential problem. But again, in a house where the air changes per hour are as low as yours, that 2 number, it's you're really parsing to try to find a problem. You're really looking for an issue that may or may not be there. So the cost effectiveness versus the energy usage for the lifespan of the house is almost not there. So it's you're getting down to a point where it's like it's worth living in the house as is than trying to find and fix that problem.
Cool. All right, man. I really appreciate you coming by and looking at it. I think there's a real benefit in getting in early before, as early as possible, and get the door in here or the blower door test and find out if there is any weak spots. It's much easier to fix. Like right now we could cut open these walls if we needed to without causing a lot of trauma.
Right. The longer you wait, just like any health problem, really. It's
yeah, right.
You don't want to sit here and in the middle of Christmas be like, well, I gotta knock something down because I got water leakage or air leakage or something's going on, or then all of a sudden grandma's is just complaining about the drafts, and then you're trying to tell your wife that everything's going to be okay and she's yelling at you. It's a terrible situation. You want to stop that immediately. Thanks for having me out. It's been fun.
Thanks, man. Talk to you again. I'll have you out soon, or obviously the next one we'll do it again.
Do it again?
Yep.
All right. Later.
Thanks for watching, guys.